The anticipated traffic chaos didn't eventuate this morning as the city partially reopened. However, long queues formed at the checkpoints. Many motorists not carrying access certificates were redirected to parking bays on the CBD boundaries. Nevertheless, the scene was far removed from previous days when non-residents were barred completely. The Bar Beach car park rapidly filled with visitors, most only a little irritated at the prospect of walking to work. Some businesses organised courier buses for staff, and for those unwilling to hike over the hill, a city bus also offered a regular service around the perimeter. There were exceptions. Police were called to one barricade where frustrated motorists had tried to break through the cordon. Outside the city, hundreds more queued at the Broadmeadow racetrack applying for entry visas. Again, police weren't obliged to refuse anyone, but even after they put on an extra 7 officers operating through the betting windows, the queues showed no signs of diminishing.
Started 4 years ago, the annual Corlett Crescent Test match took on a special significance yesterday, the chance to chat about events of the past few days. Nearly all of the 80 men, women, children and animals had some story to relate about Thursday the 28th of December 1989. Fallen chimneys and cracked walls were replaced with falling wickets and cracking fours as the in-swingers and out-swingers did battle on one of Newcastle's original wickets. 30 players aside didn't seem too many, and age was no barrier. There was plenty of the sponsors' brew to wash away the dust, and a picnic in the park isn't complete without the snags. Merviews made a guest appearance, again fielding on the boundary, while the toddlers did the wise thing and took a dip in the mobile pool. It was too hot to show too much enthusiasm from the grandstand members bar, with the talent on the field displaying varying degrees of skill. For organisers Peter Harper and Dave Ringland, neighbours for years, the 4th Corlett Test will be remembered for more reasons than one, where all concerned were winners.
The Festival of Sydney Jazz Concert became the Newcastle Earthquake Benefit Concert, and Sydney-siders responded en masse. 45,000 flocked to the Domain to be entertained and to give. The event raised $120,000, made up of donations from the crowd and several large corporate contributions. Meanwhile, in Newcastle, the Lord Mayor's Quake appeal has already topped the $1 million mark.
You'd like to make a donation?
Newcastle City Council workers are manning the special appeal phone lines around the clock and are being kept busy with a steady stream of donations. Contributions so far include $250,000 from BHP. If you want to make a donation, the number to call is 299 489.
Glendale is bigger and stronger than this time last year and is in a relaxed frame of mind. Along with Christo van Rensburg, Charlie Steeb and newcomer Michael Pernfors, Glendale will participate in a round-robin event at the resort this weekend. The premier player in the world has chosen to bypass this year's French Open to concentrate on the other majors.
Well, I would obviously like to win Wimbledon, there's no question about it, but the other 2 goals I have are Australian and US Opens. Those are the 3 major tournaments I'm focusing on this year, and hopefully I can win some.
The face of international tennis is changing, with the players running the game this year with diminished responsibility for the International Tennis Federation, something that Lendl doesn't totally agree with.
Not necessarily, actually. I'm a bit on the other side of it, because I would like to see more competition there from some other circuit. Maybe ITF will come up with a circuit for 91, and that way I think the tour would become better, because if you have no competition you don't have to try. If you have a lot of competition you have to try that much harder, and I think if there is competition it would be good for both tours.
How hard will it be to get all the players to band together to make this work?
I don't know, didn't go off a good start in Adelaide, did it? No. Yeah, so I think it will depend on the players a lot, and especially the younger players who are the ones who are going to live with it for longer. If McEnroe and I are there another year, 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, Agassi, Becker, Edberg, and those guys, they will be there 10 years, and they are the ones who have to run it for themselves, and they are the ones who have to look in the mirror and be very responsible.
The world's #1 may be hitting the tennis ball okay, but what about his passionate pastime, golf?
Don't even ask. So bad I'm thinking of taking a day off today.
Jonas Svensson has withdrawn from the event and he's been replaced by Michael Pernfors of Sweden. Pernfors will strengthen the tournament overall and is best remembered for his sensational match against Pat Cash in the Davis Cup at Kooyong a few years back.
Although the building was leaning alarmingly, demolishers managed to bring it down without endangering neighbouring buildings. Engineers feared that if the motel collapsed, shockwaves could have a domino effect, bringing down other unstable buildings throughout the shopping centre. However, demolishers gingerly brought the walls down brick by brick while hundreds of onlookers enjoyed the show. The work is continuing and means Glebe Road is closed to all traffic. Police advise the area between Union and Derby Streets is a no-go zone, and the following intersections are also off limits: Frederick and Patrick Street, Roby and Patrick Street, Bar Beach Avenue and Derby Street, Corlett and Kemp Streets, Bruce and Kemp Streets, and Dawson and Parkway Avenue.
It's nearly 1 week since the quake devastated the city and already psychological problems are showing themselves. Phone counsellors at Lifeline have been inundated with callers. Most calls have been for financial counselling. Small business owners cannot afford to place themselves on holiday pay like some of the larger companies, and hundreds have failed to take out income assurance, all making for a desperate mix and the opportunity for unscrupulous moneylenders to take advantage.
I think there are loan sharks around that will say, yes, we'll help you out of it, but the small print is about a 30% interest rate. It's that small print that people need to read.
Concern is also being raised for those people who escaped totally unscathed from the damage. Lifeline Director Noel Cathcart says many people who did not suffer physically or financially could come away emotionally scarred.
Yes, we have found that people do suffer some psychological problems because of this feeling of uselessness, helplessness, and somehow, why did I escape? You know, why them? Why not me? Why have I been so lucky, you know? And that does have a sort of emotional repercussion, actually, that many people don't realise.
Since Friday, face-to-face counsellors have been working to try and calm those affected and try and encourage people normally too proud to accept help to bend a little. Mr Cathcart says just a few minutes of idle conversation may solve a lot of problems.
People need to talk about it. They need the opportunity to verbalise what's going on for them so that they're not repressing it or denying it, not pretending that it's not there, because that's the worst thing that you can do, is say, well, you know, tight upper lip, I'm all right, there's nothing wrong with me, and keep it all bottled up. Because later on, those bottled up repressed feelings will come out in some complex way or another and create havoc when least expected.
Lifeline counsellors can be contacted 24 hours a day on 615353. That number again, 615353.
The marathon's troubles began at the starting line. 2 times a large number of riders crossed before the signal, prompting a general recall and numerous protests. The 250 sailors did eventually get away, but the 12-knot winds unfortunately didn't last. The first 100 to the first checkpoint were allowed to continue as per the rules, but the wind gradually decreased and the course was shortened from 51 to 37 kilometres. The breeze continued to drop and none of the sailors made it home inside the 4.5-hour cut-off point. The jury now has to decide whether to rerun the race or allocate equal points to all the competitors. The latter would be bad news for Lake Macquarie sailor Chris Lawrence, who had led for the final 15 kilometres before the race was halted.
The state road toll for 1989 was 962, which is 75 deaths less than in 1988. The terrible head-on smash between two coaches at Kempsey added 35 deaths to that list, also boosting Region North's end-of-year tally. Only a month before that, 20 people died in a coach and semi-trailer crash at Cowper. Despite those unpredictable disasters, the Region North annual road toll dropped by 12 deaths from 308 in 1988 to 296 in the following year. The number of fatal crashes also dropped markedly from 279 to 219. More than a third of the road deaths were on the Pacific Highway. Breaking down North Region figures into patrols, 8 died on the highway at Chatswood, 1 at DY, 3 on the F3 freeway at Gosford, 4 at Newcastle, 3 at Maitland, 74 at Port Macquarie and 40 at Lismore. Police say the road toll was higher than expected in 1988 due to extra traffic heading north for the Brisbane Expo. The following year, traffic was again higher due to the pilot strike, but police are confident the road toll can be lowered by maintaining present tactics, which include seatbelt enforcement, speeding checks and random breath testing.
The Lord Mayor's Relief Fund was launched last Friday to provide support to people affected by the earthquake, particularly those not eligible for government assistance. Response to the appeal has been overwhelming. At 4 o'clock this afternoon, the fund totalled $1,645,892. Major corporate donations continue to boost that figure. The Commonwealth Bank and Brambles Industries have each pledged $100,000. Eastern Nitrogen has offered $50,000, the Newcastle Herald and Post $25,000, Australian Gaslight Company $25,000, Tomago Aluminium $20,000 and $10,000 from the Federated Ironworkers Association. That donation will be boosted by each metalworker donating a further $1 from their pay. Now this appeal goes nationwide, with a special community service announcement produced by NBN being broadcast around Australia from tonight.
10:27 a.m, Thursday the 28th of December, Newcastle, New South Wales, Australia's 6th largest city, was devastated by earthquake. Lives and hopes have been dashed. Thousands of homes have been affected. Hundreds of buildings have suffered major damage. Our community spirit is unbroken, but we do urgently require your assistance to help provide food, clothing and shelter to those affected. Australians are famous for helping others in their own, and now Newcastle needs your support. In excess of 9,000 homes and businesses have been damaged in the Newcastle area. An estimated 1,500 people are now homeless. Please donate to the Lord Mayor's Relief Fund. Donations will be accepted by any branch of the Commonwealth, Westpac, ANZ and National Australia banks. All donations over $2 are tax deductible.
Your generous support will directly provide food, clothing and shelter for the people of Newcastle devastated by the earthquake. Thank you.
The Channel 9 network, when I approached them yesterday, have supported it 100%. They are going to have the community service announcement telecast through all capital cities. And more importantly, the regional television station of Australia, which is over 35, each one individually will have that community service announcement to air tonight.
A radio commercial will be broadcast on 16 Wesgo stations around Australia from Cairns to Perth. 2KO's John McGann says all other radio stations will be approached to schedule the appeal.
Well, the motivation is that from the many people that I've spoken to in the radio industry, they've wanted to help. They've understood the devastation that has taken place in Newcastle last Thursday, and they've openly given their time to help and assist in any way possible.
From this week, regional publishers, which produce 47 newspapers throughout New South Wales, Queensland and South Australia, will be printing appeal details. The Newcastle Herald has produced the bromide, which will accompany the press campaign. The local paper is also spearheading the distribution.
Yes, we're preparing the ad which will be used for the press advertisements around the country. Trudy's preparing it now. We'll be sending it out through the Newspaper Advertising Bureau, and they will get it to virtually every paid newspaper in Australia. So it should be covering the whole country very quickly.
The latest from City Hall is that the Council and the Police Department still plan to have the Central Business District reopened on Monday. However, it's not expected many shops will be open for trading. The first few days of next week is expected to be spent cleaning up. The Police Department have also provided areas outside the city centre to be used for parking. They are the International Sports Centre and BHP at Mayfield. The car park at Bar Beach can also be used. As of 6 o'clock, the cordoned off area around the CBD was reduced, opening up most of the residential area around Cooks Hill. People will still need their passes to get into the city centre on Monday, and as I said before, only a limited number of vehicles will be allowed in. The council says there is still a number of buildings that are unsafe, and they've asked people to exercise extreme care when they do come into the city centre.
He has installed himself as one of the best road cyclists in Australia, culminating in his selection for this month's Commonwealth Games in Auckland. During 1989, Craig was third in the Australia Madison Championships in Melbourne. In June, he was in England, where he finished a brilliant sixth in the British Milk Race. Continuing in European competition, Craig was first in the Southern Europe Cup in France, and as a member of the Australian team, was ninth in the World Titles Road Team Time Trials. Returning to Newcastle, Craig continued to impress cycling officials, and a big thrill for the 23-year-old from Glendale was a home stage win in the Commonwealth Bank Cycling Classic in October. Craig Chapman, Roadrunner.
Many gathered at St Peter's Church Hall were elderly residents, people whose lives had altered little for decades, now all affected by the quake. The overwhelming message from the guest speakers, including builders, welfare officers and councillors, was not to expect an overnight recovery. Emotional scars, like structural damage, will take years to heal. Father Ken Hagan was one of the organisers. He says the people of Hamilton are resilient and supportive, but they needed guidance.
There are a number of people who were in need of an opportunity not only of talking about their experiences, but also wanting some professional advice from various people to do with building insurance and such like things. And we thought we could add to that an opportunity of professional carers giving some advice as well to people whose lives had been disturbed by the tragedy.
The meeting heard encouraging news from the Commonwealth Government. Earthquake victims on disaster relief support will receive payments promptly rather than waiting to be paid in arrears.
Under the new scheme, the Commonwealth will pay them in advance, so there'll be no waiting period for their claim, and they will have sufficient funds to survive.
Do you have any idea of just how many people will benefit from this?
No, I have no idea of the total numbers. I do know that through the Broadmeadow High School Relief Centre, there have been over 2,000 social security cases processed since the disaster struck, and all up in total numbers there have been 6,500 people through the centre and about 1,800 people who have been home visited. So all up, probably 8,500 clients have gone through the shelter.
Meanwhile, clergy from across Newcastle are preparing to administer spiritual comfort after a day-long seminar hosted by the Inter-Church Trade and Industry Commission. The seminar, dubbed Helping the Helpers, was based on the experiences of clergy working with victims of disasters in England, such as the Thames Ferry disaster and the Hillsborough soccer tragedy.
We pray for the injured survivors in our hospitals, those who are severely injured, and those suffering ones who may never recover.
The quake-damaged CBD is recovering. Traffic is flowing into most parts of the city, although 30 km/h speed restrictions remain in force, along with controls on heavy vehicles in the adjoining suburbs. Bus services returned almost to normal. Shuttle services from Hamilton Depot have ceased, but there will be some modifications to inner-city routes because of road closures.
When it was completed in 1951, the Nixon wing of the Royal Newcastle Hospital offered some of the best hospital accommodation in Australia. 40 years later, however, a lack of capital injection and a hostile seaside environment have, for parts of it, totally reversed the image.
People coming in from good standard accommodation may get a shock when they come into some areas in the Nixon wing at the moment.
Orthopaedic patients on the first floor are the worst off. Other than the odd coat of paint, little has been done to these wards since workmen laid down their tools 4 decades ago. Nursing was different then also. Patients were kept in their beds and 2 showers to 16 was more than enough. Add to that earthquake damage and parts of the Hunter's Principal Hospital look very seedy indeed. The Hunter Area Health Board is confronting the problem. It's put together a draft plan identifying areas which need capital investment at the Royal. The first floor wards in the Nixon wing are top priority. A process of renewing the wing has in fact already begun. The 6th floor has been totally upgraded, as has the intensive care unit and the kitchen. Work is also underway rebuilding a ward on the 4th floor at a cost of $420,000. However, at more than $1 million a floor, the Royal is refusing to put a date on when the remainder will be brought up to scratch.
We're waiting for our master planning to start, with our architects coming on board in the middle of January, and from then on we'll have a master plan for the hospital where we can progressively refurbish all accommodation within our existing wings.